Chair, we're now live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Virtual Development Control Committee, and welcome to those members of the public watching on the Council's YouTube channel. Just to remind everybody in the actual meeting, can you make sure your phones are either switched off or on silent mode, please, for the duration of the meeting? Webcasting, this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. A copy of the recording will be available on the channel shortly after the meeting. Members and officers are reminded to keep their microphones on mute, please, unless you're called upon to speak. Members can indicate if they wish to speak via the meeting chat function. Please don't use the chat function for any questions to officers or councillors, because they will not be answered. All you need to do is type your name in whatever form you like in the chat function, and we'll pick that up. Members of the public are reminded that the planning application process is constrained by the need to have regard of current planning policy as at national, regional and local levels, as well as other material planning considerations, including case law precedent. The decision-making process is often described as quasi-judicial because local planning authorities have to act reasonable within the bounds of planning law and the above considerations, and are not free to determine planning applications simply because of the weight of public opinion. Who's who here this evening? Elected councillors who are present remotely this evening are members of this committee and will decide what action this committee takes on the issues it considers. I will now introduce the councillors and officers of the meeting. So I'll call out your name, councillors, and if you could just say hi or good evening or present to indicate that you're here. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to go through in alphabetical order. So Councillor Roy Aurora.
Present, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Steph Archer.
Present.
Thank you. Hello. Councillor Kim Bailey, who's Vice Chair.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening. Councillor Mark Benyon.
Good evening, Chair.
Councillor David Cunningham.
Good evening.
Thank you. Councillor Lorraine Dunstone.
Good evening, Chair.
Councillor Simon Edwards.
Good evening.
Councillor Leslie Heap.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening. Councillor Dave Ryder Mills. Dave is muted, it seems.
Yeah. The mute wouldn't work properly. Good evening.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Rebecca Mole.
Hello, Chair.
And finally, I do come at the end of the list alphabetically. I'm Malcolm Self, and I'm chair of this committee. Thank you. We've got no other councillors present this evening. We've got officers, Sam Nichols. Maybe you'd like to say hello. Sam Nichols. I won't go through every officer, but Sam Nichols, who's Democratic Services. And
hello, Chair.
Will be keeping us in order and taking the minutes. Thank you, Sam. We've got Barry Lomax, Head of Development Management. Hello, Barry. Good evening. We've got Toby Feltham, who's Lead Planning Officer for Strategic Major Developments and Planning Delivery, and Toby will be presenting the main planning application that we've got this evening. Hello, Toby.
Hi. Hiya.
Thank you. And we've got a number of we've got some IT staff on board. Thank you very much for coming to help us out should we have IT issues. So thank you to you all. Public participation. There is a registration scheme for residents and applications wishing to participate on planning applications that are considered by this committee. Members of the public who have registered to speak will be, I don't need to read this bit out. It goes on to say how we will contact you during the meeting. For this particular meeting, there are no registered speakers. Councillors, there's no non-committee members, councillors registered to speak or that have asked to speak at this meeting either. So that takes us on to apologies for absence and attendance of substitute members. Since we've done a roll call and we know that all members of the committee here, I can say that there are no absences and therefore no substitute members. That takes us on to approval of previous minutes. The minutes, we held a meeting last week for Development Control Committee the minutes of the meeting on the 1st of July, and this meeting will be taken at a future meeting for approval, because the minutes from last week's meeting for the 1st of July have not yet been published. Declarations of interest. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest and any other non-pecuniary interests, i.e. personal interests, relevant to items on this agenda. If you've got any, could you just indicate in the chat function if you've got any interest to declare? And I'll pause just briefly to allow any names to come up in front of me. I can see everybody on my screen as well, and there's nobody waving hands, so there are no declarations of interest. That takes us to the planning application that we're here to consider this evening, which is for the Burlington Retail Park on Burlington Road, New Morden. I'm going to turn to Toby Feltham, lead planning officer, who I think is going to present this item. So over to you, Toby.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just get this on my screen. Okay, thank you. Can you all see that?
It's just coming up this way. We've got it. I've got it okay. I think hopefully everybody's got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it's just loading onto mine. Okay. Okay, so we have a planning application for refurbishment and reconfiguration of the existing retail units, which are Class A1, including 1 unit for the sale of food and drink, a small extension of 38 square metres to accommodate ancillary office and servicing facilities, installation of a non-trading mezzanine, erection of a new pod unit accommodating 3 commercial operators, which for Class A1 retail, and some A1/A3 retail, which will be to the front of the site. Reconfiguration of the car parking, which does involve the loss of some car parking, and hard and soft landscaping and other associated physical works. So here we have the existing site plan, which it includes at the moment a large sort of Curry's PC World, which is Unit A. And then Unit B is currently Dreams. You've also got 239 parking spaces, I think, existing, and that's all fronts onto Burlington Road. Immediately to the west of this is shops which form part of Burlington Local Centre. So here shows you the sort of slightly wider context. So to the south of the site, you've got Morden Way, which forms part of the A3, and is why Transport for London have been commenting on this, because of any potential impact on there. You can also see to the northwest of this site, there's a route through which takes you through to Blagdon open space. That is technically where the New Malden district centre commences. So I'll just tell you a few views here. This is a view from Burlington Road. So you can see the car parking that we've talked about. You can see on the right the start of Burlington Local Centre, and to the rear you can see the existing sort of retail shed. This is down Albert Road, which is it's got residential properties on the right, and on the left is the application site with the car parking beyond. This is the access road which takes you off of Burlington Road into the site, and then obviously out of the site. And this just gives you a view from that access road of the sort of car parking, the retail sheds, the residential beyond, and you can see the end on the right. You can see the end of the shop, which forms the end of the local centre. And this is the rear of the site. So you can see to the right the A3 and the slip road that you see there on the left of the A3 takes you down to the roundabout. And there's just another view from the rear of this site. So in terms of existing, we've got 4,004 square meters for Unit A, which is the Curry's PC World, and then a smaller unit, 548, I think that is, for Dreams. And this just gives you a roof plan. These show you the existing elevation. So it's a standard, I suppose, sort of big box retail, and the sections through. So this shows you the proposed changes. So we get Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, which sort of follows the building line of Burlington Road of the adjacent, and then the car park around that, which would provide 170 parking spaces, and then the retail units of which would be the converted Curry's PC World and Dreams, which would include a slightly smaller Curry's PC World and a proposed to be a little food superstore. So that shows you the split. So the split is slightly different to now. So the Unit B has got slightly bigger and Unit A has got slightly smaller. This shows you some of the works in terms of sort of tree planting and landscaping and that kind of things. And this shows you the layout of the pod units. So the unit number 1, which one to the left, would contain a 465 square meter unit, which is proposed to be Dreams, so relocated from the existing store. Unit 2, an A1/A3 unit of 111 square meters, which would supposed to be Greg's. Then Unit 3 on the right, 167 square meters, which is supposed to be Costa. And this also shows you there's a mezzanine floor above the Dreams. So, and that just shows you the roof plan. So here's the elevations of the existing. So you'll see that it's a more glazed frontage. So if you look at the top view, it's more glazed frontage with the sort of retail signage above, and that's sort of got a grey sort of panels to frame that glazing. Then we've got the pod units. So if you look at the top one, you can see it's mostly glazed, but there's some brickwork, there's some grey panels too, and the signage there. Probably if you look at the one below that, that shows a view from the adjoining Albert Road, and the third one down is looking at it from Burlington Road. So it's a basically glazed frontage, and you can see on the right of that it's broadly similar height to the retail unit at the end of the local centre. And this just gives you one that's slightly closer up to see that. Yeah, we've seen that. Okay, so in terms of representations, we've had 5 objections to this from surrounding residents. We've had no objections from our neighbourhood traffic engineer, our tree officer, environmental health. Also, Environment Agency have raised no objection. Transport for London have asked for a significant amount of work which has been done to assess the impacts on the roundabouts at either end, and their particular concern being whether there will be an impact on the A3. Now, they've raised no objection to the impact on the Transport for London's road now at the A3. So, and so in terms of the assessment of this, this development is for a proposal of less than 2,500 square metres. So the additional floor space would be 1,091 square metres of extra retail floor space. And it's worth noting that the proposed Lidl would be 1,324 square metres of floor space. So this this falls below the threshold, so no retail impact assessment is required. I'll just briefly explain what a retail impact assessment is. It's an assessment of the impact of a proposal on the vitality and viability of existing centres within the catchment area of the proposed development. However, notwithstanding that, there has been an assessment of what the potential impact may be in a sort of broad brush way. The conclusion of that was that there would be no significant impact. A sequential assessment is however required in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework, and that has been undertaken, and that has concluded that this is the most sequentially preferable site to accommodate the proposed development within the area. So this is looked at places as far as Kingston Town Centre, obviously New Malden, but hasn't found any sequentially preferable places. In terms of the physical works, putting the new building, officers consider that sort of fits well with the existing character of the adjoining properties, and actually is probably an improvement than compared to seeing a large car park. So thank you. That's all from me, Chair.
Thank you very much, Toby. There's no registered speakers this evening, but as a matter of routine procedure, I'm now going to move the recommendation to approve this application. I do that without any prejudice to what I think of the application, its merits or otherwise, and it is a matter of routine procedure that we will do with every application that comes to this committee from now on. Is there a seconder for that, please?
Hello, Chair. I'm prepared to second that.
Thank you very much, Kim. That takes us on to questions from committee to officers. This is just, and if we can keep these just to questions at the moment rather than comments. Any specific question? I'll have one if nobody else does. If you can just put your names in the chat function, they're all coming up now. I'm just making a note. So far, I've got Simon, Lorraine, and then Rebecca. I'm going to turn therefore to Simon. Councillor Edwards, if you'd like to go ahead. Others can, if you add your name to the chat function as this goes ahead, I'll pick your names up. Thank you. Over to you, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a couple of questions which are sort of rolled up in comments as well, but that's sometimes inevitable, I feel. And I won't repeat myself when we come to comments, promise. So far as the sequential assessment is concerned, I found that a little hard to follow, and perhaps Toby, you can help here, because it presupposed that you had to look at a site which would encompass everything. In other words, the Currys, the Dreams, the Lidl, the Greggs, and the Costa. Whereas in reality, all we're getting is an extra little bit of retail space and a couple of small cafes in a corner of the site. And so I find that rather hard to follow. And I wondered if you could clarify that. And also if you could make any comment on the fact that some of the data in the sequential assessment was a bit out of date, given that Tudor Williams is now shut in the high street, and just recently Johnson's Shoes. So if you could comment on that, and also in relation to traffic, I obviously understand that we can only refuse on-traffic gowns if the effect is going to be severe. But I must admit to a little bit of a raising of the eyebrow when I saw the effect, not so much on Shannon Corner, but the Fountain roundabout, which is notorious for delays, was also assessed as, well, insignificant. And I wondered if you could make a comment on that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Toby, if that's okay.
Thank you. So in terms of the sequential test, yes. So the applicants have looked at where these sites could fit in sequentially, and yes, they have. I suppose they aren't required to split this into the smaller components, but I think also when you look at the sequential test and the sites where they've found, they haven't sort of found any other sites within say New Malden or even in Kingston, for instance, where this little superstore, which is probably the main change really in some ways that we're considering here, could fit in, and you know, part of their requirements is being close to car parking. So you'll see that lots of their other units are close to that, in part because people will be carrying many bags, stuff. So they have looked at the other sites, and they haven't found anything which is sequentially preferable. And we've looked at that, and we're satisfied that that's the case. I mean, it is. I suppose it is worth saying it is technically about 300 meters, I think, from the edge of New Malden town centre, which starts at Blagdon retail space, and 600 meters if you were to walk along the roads to the roundabout at the Fountain roundabout. I mean, one of the this was submitted a very long time ago, this application. I mean, over a year, I think, and one of the reasons for delay, which we didn't anticipate, was that Transport for London would want to look at all of the transport modelling to assess the impact on the roundabouts and the A3. So that they have done, and they have concluded that there is no significant impact on those. And obviously at the same time, our engineers have concurred with that view. So yeah, there isn't any sort of significant impacts in that regard. And apologies, I think there might have been another question. No, that's it. Okay.
Thank you, Toby. I don't know, Simon, if that's answered your questions. In your questions, Simon, you particularly made reference to when the sequential modelling assessment was done, and whether what is now the empty Tudor Williams site was taken into account. Do you know the answer to that, Toby?
Yeah. So the Tudor Williams site. So that has a ground floor of 845 square meters, which is 30% smaller than the proposed Lidl here, and it doesn't have the benefit of adjacent car parking, and so that was concluded that wasn't appropriate. You know, I'm sure, you know, Lidl will be looking at all opportunities that come up, but they it didn't work for them. But plus also, I suppose they whilst their existing store is sort of fairly close to this, and they've said that they will keep that store open, which is currently over trading. It would be putting probably 2 stores within New Malden district centre may not work for them anyway. So that's what I have on that.
Okay, thanks for that. I think you have answered that now. Thank you, Toby. In line to ask questions, I've got Lorraine, Rebecca, Steph, Kim, then Dave. So that's Dave Ryder Mills. So over to you, Lorraine.
Good evening, Toby. So I've got two questions, if that's all right. First of one is I may have missed it, and I do apologise if I did, but I didn't see a view because I found it difficult to follow some of the presentation that came through to us online, and I couldn't see a picture of a view from Albert Road for looking into behind the pods. So I don't know if you've got that. The other thing I was interested in was on page A8, paragraph 31. It mentions about technical note, including traffic flows and a survey of existing peak hours from Liddell Leatherhead Road to use as a comparator. Now, Liddell's in Leatherhead Road has about 30 car parking spaces, whereas this one will be looking at about 170 car parking spaces. So obviously we don't get a backlog of 170 cars, although it may feel like that sometimes in Leatherhead Road. So I wondered actually if you could explain a bit more about how that comparison was actually used for this site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Toby. I think you've got the view from Albert Road and the car parking issue.
Yeah, so let me just see if I can take you back to the presentation. So I think you were looking for this one, which is the elevation of the pod units from Albert Road. In which case, this is it. It's the sort of first one down. Does that?
Thank you. I couldn't see that. I couldn't read it earlier. Okay, thank you.
That's what that would look like. Yeah, in terms of the Liddell in Chessington, so I think that has about 60 parking spaces. Let's just take. Yeah, so 60 parking spaces, but obviously that is solely for Liddell, and as we know, that does have permission for an extension to the car park, because I think there are sometimes times when it overtops the car parking. But this is obviously a shared car park, so it would provide for the other retail units. It also we've also put a condition on which said that there would be people could have an hour up to at least an hour's free parking here, and I know that this is also used by Burlington schools opposite, so those kind of things would continue. And actually, it's a fairly short walk into New Malden Town Centre, probably 5 or 6 minutes. So it's probably providing a greater sort of variety of uses than solely just for Liddell. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, not really. Sorry. Apologies. No, I was asking, you know, how it could be, how Liddell's in Leatherhead Road could be used as a comparison when it has less than, well, I think it has a lot less than 60 car parking spaces, but that's my own personal, I haven't looked into that, apart from tried to count them earlier. I was trying to work out why you've used Liddell in Chessington as a comparison again for a smaller site to this larger site as a car park. So that's, I was just trying to understand why that comparison was used.
I'm not an engineer, but I mean, I think what they tend to do is to look for kind of, I suppose the most similar nearby type of use, and to draw comparison with how that would work in terms of how it does work in terms of traffic flows. So our engineers have assessed that, and they're happy with that comparison, and have raised no objections to this. So that's probably as much as I can tell you really on that.
Thank you, Toby. It might be useful if you could. I don't know whether you know the answer to this. If you knew roughly the trading area of the store, the little store in Chessington, versus, versus the trading area of the proposed Lidl here, and we know that there's about 60 car parking spaces at Chessington and 170 in total here, of course. But it might be good just if we could have in our minds to compare the trading, trading areas.
But I think that from what I've managed to work out, I think that's less than 1,000 square meters. So this is 1,324 square meters that's proposed here, plus 321 square meters of non-trading area on the first floor. So this is bigger, and I would also suspect that this would serve a large catchment than the one in Chessington, because as you don't have to go too far, and you end up in the Greenbelt and countryside. So whereas this is in the urban in the urban area, and is surrounded very much by greater amount of housing.
Okay, thank you, Toby. Rebecca, what's next?
I just wanted to ask a question. Well, I did have traffic, but I think we've done that to death by the experts, around air quality. So one of the questions raised by objectors was the residential nature of the site and the two nearby schools. We know it's busy roads, but what is the policy? What is the thinking behind that? One assumes that 170 spaces will generate some more trips, even if it's not a severe a severe impact in terms of traffic assessment. And so what has been done? What are the policies around that? Has air quality been assessed? I didn't see it in the report, and I even read the conditions, so I feel like it's probably not there.
So I mean, in terms of the additional impact, I suppose it's not the necessary additional impact from the 170 spaces, because obviously there was actually less parking spaces. So in theory, there are less vehicles that could come and park here compared to the existing situation, albeit the existing parking, I think, is probably not as well used as this may well be in the future. But in terms of the air quality, so yes, I don't think there is a section within the report, but in terms of that, we haven't considered that there would be a significant impact on air quality, such that we'd be able to refuse an application here.
Okay. Thank you, Toby.
Mr. Chairman, can I come in just briefly?
Rebecca wanted to come back, but I'll let you come in, Barry. Thank you.
Sorry. It's also important to know that there will be a certain quantum of traffic movements associated with this development, which will be taking shopping from nearby big retail outlets. So what we can't assume is that all the traffic associated with this development will be new traffic on the network. A significant amount of the traffic will be traffic diverted from Tesco's, the other side of the Shannon roundabout or Shannon corner, or from indeed Aldi further on Kingston Road into New Malden. So the transport assessment does discount amount of traffic that's already on the highway network, and then says that the rest of it may not be too different to a comparison goods store, although there will be different behaviours and different trip times. So I wouldn't want members to think this is a car park of X number of spaces, therefore there's going to be X additional trips on the network. That's not necessarily the case. That's not the conclusion. It may not increase a significant number of trips because they will be diverted either from other stores or would have taken place anyway as a comparison goods shop. I hope that just adds a little bit of extra information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Barry. Did you want to come back, Rebecca?
Yeah, although I did that's really helpful way of putting it, Barry. I think the thing, Toby, that I'd like to come back on is just what assessment has been done around air quality. We know it's a big priority for all of us for future, well, for all of us, and with this impacting on the future generations, has there been an assessment and it has been assessed not severe?
I don't know the answer to that. I can have a quick look at that now, but I can't give you an answer on that because I don't specifically know the answer. I'll have a look though. I'll try and find out the answer before the questions are finished.
Okay, thank you, Toby.
If I can answer, I don't want to ruin the suspense that Toby was building up by trying to find it. They have not carried out a specific air quality assessment for the reasons that I've set out, that it's not envisaged that there will be a significant number of additional trips on the network. Those trips will be, as I've said, either diverted from other retail units or would be linked to this site already. So when we've assessed it and we've discussed with our friends and colleagues in the highway service, we don't think it's going to be that extra amount of trips on the network. One thing we can do, I just can't quite open my committee papers on my computer, but we could look at the conditions about things related to electrical charging points. I'm not sure whether this car park has electrical charging points already, and I'm sure Toby can tell me whether we can have extra ones that may go some way to address those air quality issues and capture that by way of condition. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Hopefully I'm still on. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. We might come back to that, and we've got a chance when we get to comments in any case. So I'm going to turn to Steph. Thank you.
Yeah, it's about the public transport as well. So obviously accessibility is poor. When TfL have done they've looked at the whole area, you said, and that was what has delayed this application. Is there any possible chance that it might be better, this site might be better served in the future, public transport?
Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Steph and Toby.
We haven't any indication that it will be. I suppose obviously there are buses which run close by, but then I guess the rest of your sort of public transport comes from down to the Fountain Roundabout or down to New Malden and the train station. So I guess part of that would be, part of the way of improving that would be to get better routes across to the high street and via sort of Blagden Road space and Cox Crescent, but there's nothing that I'm aware of that would improve the public transport. I mean, although it's a PTAL 2, it's very close to a PTAL 3. And you're also in New Malden, you get up to PTAL 4, so you're within certainly 5 minutes walk of a PTAL 4. So you do have public transport options in this location. Okay.
Thank you.
Self, you're on mute.
I do apologise. Sorry. Has that answered your question, Steph? I think it has, but did you want to come back?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you very much. In that case, it's Kim next. Councillor Bailey, thank you.
Hi, Toby. I've just got a couple of questions. One, the empty mezzanine floor. That I'm a bit curious about that. What's going to happen on that? Is it going to be visually attractive from the road, or is there going to be an activity up there that's non-trading? I didn't know what that was.
So this is on the proposed pod that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's basically above the retail unit. So it's the sort of pod building is effectively 2 stories, so you can go up to that floor. I'll show you the elevation.
It's really if there are going to be any plans for it, if it's, I don't know, have a green roof or just going to be bare concrete up there. Just wondering what's going to happen.
Well, it's designed as part of the whole, the whole building is designed as one, but I think there's I think there is, from memory, there is some glazing. Let me just open it for you and. So yeah, so I think you're talking about the area here. So there's an overlay which will divide this this unit here. So there would be an element of upstairs and an element of ground floor. So I think if you see it as a whole and a sort of mostly glazed frontage, then that would work together in my view. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it just seemed sort of a bit of a waste of space, really. They can use it for something. Right.
Yeah, I don't think they're using the upper floors here, but then they have sort of space which will give you a nice high ceilings and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Thank you, Toby. I think you've answered.
Just to answer one previous question, was about electric vehicle charging points.
I've got a question on that as well, Toby. I don't know whether I should come in on that or not, but
they would be providing 7 active spaces and additional 7 passive spaces for electric vehicles. So that would be a benefit.
Sorry, I just had one other question, sort of about the sustainability appraisals. I know the environmental side of things seems to be has been done quite thoroughly. I'm just wondering about recycling. There were no, when in the application there was no indication that any recycling facilities are going to be included, and I would have thought both for Currys and for Lidl that was going to be quite important.
Thank you, Toby. If we can just ask, it's a factual question. Will the future occupiers of these units be required to recycle? Whether they do recycle or not voluntarily, even if there's not a condition to, I don't know. But is there a requirement within the planning permission for them to recycle?
There's no specific requirement within the planning permission, but they would be expected to anyway through the normal sort of refuse and recycling processes.
Okay, thank you very much, Toby. And Kim, if we want to make comments on that, obviously we can. When we get to comments, you may wish to make a comment on that.
Okay, sorry, I didn't phrase it quite as
Thank you very much. I've got Dave, then Mark, then Leslie, and then hopefully I expect then to draw a close to questions. If anybody has got a question, you have to be very quick to get it in, because I'm going to move on to comments after I got Dave, Mark, and Leslie. Thank you. Over to you, Dave.
Thank you. Sorry, it's back to traffic again. I think Barry got some way towards explaining it quite well, but I still don't understand paragraph 33, where it says, or I believe it says, that it's only going to generate 10 extra two-way trips per hour, or maximum of 10 extra two-way trips per hour, going through the Burlington, the Fountain Roundabout, which I can't believe is enough to generate enough retail activity in a Lidl this size. Am I misunderstanding paragraph 33?
So thank you, Dave. It seems like a good question. 10 trips each way does seem on the low side from, what should we say, just subject. I know I'm not being objective, but I agree with Dave. Subjectively, it doesn't seem a high enough figure. Have you got a comment on that, Toby? Do you know how they've arrived at that figure?
Yeah, that's done sort of using predicting, and as we know, this has been subject to some quite some traffic modelling above the what you would normally get on these because of its proximity to the Transport for London routes. But yes, I mean, obviously, traffic comes from two directions, I guess, to get here. So some of it will come from the other direction. Not everyone would come by car here, but also I suppose people may not come that much in the peak hour. So people would be spread across different hours. People probably aren't going to queue for half an hour to get through Burlington Roundabout if they at peak hours, if they can come outside of peak hours where the traffic is perhaps a bit lighter. So it will fluctuate across the day, and obviously the weekends will be different as well. And there are no peak hours at weekends.
Okay.
Can I ask who did the modelling? Was it TfL? Was it RBK? Was it the developer? Was it somebody else?
So the developer has provided the information, but that's been put into a model which I think has been run by Transport for London. So they have looked at where all of this would go. So yes, I mean, this has taken probably 6 months or so longer than we would have expected, because the information has been digested and put into models by Transport for London. So it's been done very comprehensively.
Toby, is the short answer, the modelling has been done by a combination of the applicant and Transport for London?
Yeah, they've ultimately verified it and got figures that they're happy with to say this is how it will be, and then concluded, well, actually, yes, we're fine. We don't think this will have a significant impact.
Okay, thank you for that, Toby. We'll move to Mark.
Thank you, Chair. It's regarding parking. So I know whenever I've been past the site over the years, the car park is rarely, very full. There's much more empty spaces than there are cars there. But there's going to be a significant reduction in the car parking spaces and an increase in the units, the businesses there, and potentially, particularly kind of short stay people coming in to get shopping or coffee or going to Greg's or whatever. Just wondering if there's been kind of assessments of the car parking, the number of car parking spaces, whether you think it's likely that it would be, get full up, and just the consequences for I know there's residential roads around there. What's in place? Is it likely that people might, especially if they're just going for a short stop to kind of get some food or coffee, is it likely that people might be parking on the side roads? Are there kind of CPZs in place? What's your view on that? Yeah, that's the question, please, Toby. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and over to you, Toby. Thank you. Toby? I think are you on?
Sorry. Yes, sorry. Yes. So I'm just trying to find the section here which deals with it. So the applicant has agreed to a contribution towards controlled parking, a controlled parking zone, should that be required. So that is a contribution of £25,000. But it's not anticipated that this will exceed the parking here, and the parking provided does comply with the London plan, which, let me just get the figures here. So the maximum for the parking stands will be 225 car parking spaces, and this proposes 170. So there's an overall difference, 55 between the maximum and I suppose potentially there could be some overspill into adjacent residential roads. Well, that's covered by the controlled parking zone contribution, should that become an issue.
Okay, thank you. Mark, do you want to come back?
Just quickly, just to confirm then. So there's no. So at the moment, people can park in the residential roads. There's no controlled parking zones there at the moment. Is that what you're saying?
I think that is what Toby's saying. But
if I can go back, I think some of the royal roads, they have parking restrictions, or CPZ. I forget the name of the. I just know there's the royal roads, but some of the New Malden members may be able to pinpoint directly which ones have CPZ. Some of them do, which is a rarity in New Malden, but I think there's 3 or 4. I'm looking for one of the New Malden councillors to help me.
It looks like Simon might, I don't know, Kim, yeah.
I can help. Albert Road, which is directly next to the site, and then George Road and Queen's Road, which go up towards the Fountain Roundabout on the southern side of Burlington Road, are all controlled by PPAs. The only and Blagden Road has Burlington Road itself. Burlington Road itself has quite limited parking anyway, because it's a main road. The only road that's likely to be affected is Beverley Road, which doesn't have a PPA or CPZ, and as Toby says, there's a provision for a survey and a substantial amount of money set aside for setting one up should it become necessary. I think that probably answers that question.
Thank you, Simon, for that. Thank you. I'm going to turn for the penultimate question from Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, Toby, you've talked about the reconfiguration of the existing units and a glass frontage and all this. Is there any part of it that would be demolished? And are there any parts or any additions to the current building that would give it a taller or bigger height? Thank you.
Thank you, Toby.
Okay, thank you. I think it's broad. The height is broadly similar. There's a extension of 38 square meters for servicing, but yes, it's not a particularly tall building. I think it may be kind of squared off, so it may get slightly taller in some parts, but not very significantly, really. I mean, if you want, I can show you the existing and proposed plans, but it's fairly similar.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to come back, Leslie? Yeah, please do.
Yeah, can I just follow up on that? The picture that you showed, which is like a cheese wedge that goes on to the A3, is that going to stay? It's just a piece of land, or is that going to be built on? Because that seems to run at the back of it. And then the other question I had was about the access road for the deliveries for all the units. Where does that run from once you get onto the site itself? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Leslie.
I will just take you to that plan. That's probably the best one. So you were talking about the area to the south of here, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not proposed to change. They're putting some signage on at that end, and then the servicing comes through to here.
Yeah.
And I think that service is here, and then this bit down here would service this building, this side. So it all takes place within the site.
Okay. Thank you, Toby. Thank you very much. If you're not speaking, if you can mute, that would be good. Thank you. I've got a question which is a bit technical, and it refers to paragraphs 44 to 47 on page A9. So I'll give you just a moment to get those paragraphs up. This is to do with electric charging points.
Oh, sorry, which paragraph was that?
Paragraphs 45, 44, 45, 46, 47.
Yes.
On page A9. I'll let you get the paragraphs up before I ask the question.
Yes, I've got them.
Right, paragraph 44 says that according to the London plan, 20% of parking spaces must be, as I see it, active for electric vehicles, with an additional 20% passive provision. And then we go on to paragraph 45 that says that the applicants calculated that 39% of the total parking provision is for the additional A1 and A3 retail and pods areas. So 39% of the total parking is 66 spaces. 39% of 170 is 66 spaces. And then it says that so 20% of 66 is 13 and a bit. Well, I don't mind whether we call that 13. I would hope they would round it up to the 14. So that says there should be 14 active and then a further 20%, i.e. a further 14% passive. But then we go on to paragraph 46, 47, which says that there will be 7 active and 7 passive. So have they miscalculated? Because according to my calculations, there should be a minimum of 14%, sorry, 14 active and 14 passive. Have I misinterpreted those calculations?
Yes, and that would be my interpretation too. I'm just going to check how we secured this, because I do seem to remember raising this very issue. I'm just trying to see if no, let's do that there. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things which does cause some confusion, and if you read the London plan, it's not as clear as it could be, but I would interpret that myself as you have actually, Councillor Self, in that should be 14 plus 14.
Right. Thank you, Toby. To move things, I'll probably return to this subject when we get to comments, and you can probably guess where I'm going with that. But that's my question. Thank you. So that's questions. We now turn to the debate. So if you'd like to put your names in the chat function, we haven't got anybody at the moment, but there will be very shortly, I'm sure. If not, I can just come in with comments. We don't have to have a debate. Don't think you have to speak on this. We can go straight to a vote if we wish, but I will make some comments of my own first. But there's no names coming up. That's not a problem. I'm just going to come in with a comment. I would like to see, should this be approved, if this finishes up being approved, if this was a brownfield site with nothing there at all at the moment, and it was coming forward for this with the 170 spaces and a retail and the retail sheds, etc. My understanding is that the London plan would say that there should be 34 active spaces and 34 passive electric charging points. And the applicants are arguing, well, the additional if I've understood it right, they're saying that the additional retail will only give rise to their 39% of the total, so therefore they only need to provide 39% of that. I think there's a miscalculation because they're suggesting 7 plus 7. So an absolute minimum, I would like to see 14 plus 14, and ideally I'd like to see more than that. But I don't know if any officers, if you would have, we haven't got, I would have asked that question, had the applicant been, had we had objectors and applicants to speak, I would have asked that question. But can we change that condition to put more electric vehicle charging points in?
Can I come in?
Yeah,
yes, certainly looking at the figures, I think there has been an error in the report, and your maths appears on the face of it to be better than our maths. So yes, that 40 or 17 to be whatever the 20% is. But it might be, Chair, that if we are looking at a condition, we look at whether we can look for rapid charging electrical charging points, as opposed to what would be a non-rapid charging. So it might be that instead of looking for the higher figure, we have a condition that we work with you as the chair and the vice chair to see whether we can get rapid charging points, but that might be at a lesser number than the large number you spoke about. So maybe we can use it as leverage to get more rapid charging spaces, which I think would be a benefit to everybody.
I absolutely agree with you, Barry, because rather than my 34 plus 34, but we'll just take my 34 as a high-end number of charging spaces. If they were all the trickle type charging, they would be, in this instance, they would be, I should say, virtually useless because they take overnight to charge, or that length of time. So I would much support a fewer number of rapid, the most rapid. I know there's about 3 levels of rates of charging from charging points, but I would certainly prefer to see that. Yeah. So I don't know how that leaves us with the condition, Barry or Toby, but
yeah. Well, look, just looking at that, I'm not sure that we've actually got a condition here. So I think we need to make sure that we have the condition.
Yeah. So the condition could be worded that prior to commencement of development, the developer shall submit details of electrical charging points at a minimum of the. I think we should go for the minimum of the 34 you've identified. Well, no, unless we can agree a different number with rapid charging points. So that's not the exact wording.
Yeah. Yes.
28, Barry.
Baseline of the 34.
I don't know quite how you word it, but we would be looking for 34 charging spaces active. But how do you word it? But that number could be reduced if they were rapid.
Rapid, yes. So we could look at. So the condition would be a minimum of the 34, but we would be looking at more. So it might be actually, Mr. Chairman, that prior to the decision being issued, we know the number of rapid charging points and could come back to you to change the condition to X number of rapid charging points to be delivered. So the committee say details of the charging points to be submitted at the minimum of 34, unless otherwise agreed in writing, with an expectation that rapid points are included. I suspect before we get to a point of issuing, we will know what the number of rapid would be.
I think you've got to a resolution there, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you, Barry.
Just like, because Councillor South, you said 14 plus 14, which is 28.
It is.
So
based on they're arguing that they only need to take 39%.
No, if Barry was saying 34, so I thought I'd just correct that you were actually only asking for 28 as a minimum.
I'd like to see more, but but on the other hand, we don't want to put a condition in that's considered unreasonable. So I want to be reasonable about it. I'm just looking to get more than the 7 plus 7.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know whether it's useful. Maybe at this stage, I don't know if we should mention a number, Barry or Toby. Do we just say we will be looking for rapid charging points and this to be agreed?
I think, Mr. Chairman, if the committee is minded, we could, and I'm getting rather ahead of myself, to approve subject to a condition regarding electrical charging points to be agreed with the chair and vice chair prior to a decision being issued. So then we would have that number fixed before anything leaves the building.
Because otherwise we get backed into a corner where we've said something and then we want to backtrack on it. So I think that's a good solution. Thank you. Comments. I've got Dave and then David and then Rebecca. So Dave.
Sorry, my mute button is being very unresponsive. Yes, paragraph 38 recommends that deliveries avoid the school pickup and drop off times. Elsewhere in the report, it refers to parents actually using parking spaces to aid pickup and drop off. Can we strengthen this to a ban on deliveries at these times? We've got two very large, well, one very large junior school and one very large primary infant school. Many of our schools are now benefiting from being school streets where traffic is completely banned during these times. Obviously, we can't do this in Burlington Road, but at least we can take the delivery vehicles off the road for these times. Are we able to strengthen our recommendation, strengthen the condition that far? And this would apply both to deliveries during construction and also during operation.
Thank you, Dave. I'm just looking. The conditions at the moment don't specify anything. Condition 16 says, prior to the occupation of the development, a servicing and delivery management plan shall be submitted to the local planning authority and the development thereafter operated in accordance with those details. So that is completely open at the moment. I understand what you're saying, Dave. I don't mind whether Toby or Barry comes in on this. Do we need, David's suggestion, we want to strengthen that to actually put in hours. Do we want to do that? And is that?
I think a very quick response. I can't see why we couldn't prevent service deliveries in school hours. School hours, I assume, would be, it's a long time since I went to school, but I imagine 8 till 9 and 2:30 till 3:30. I don't go to school anymore, so I'm not quite sure what those hours are, but our highways department will know what those hours are, so they could advise, and we could, yes, certainly introduce some type of restriction.
Okay, I'll put that down as a delivery hours, yeah, because we'll sum up at the end what we're putting in and what we're not. EV points. Thank you, officers. Thank you for that. David Cunningham. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. 2 points. One on parking. My experience is slightly different from Councillor Mark Bayan, in as much as I have been there when the car park has been totally full, and I mind that the footfall for a food shop is very much higher than an electrical discount warehouse. So, although I don't know, and I would suspect that there will be the possibility, I put it no higher than that, of displacement for people parking around the surrounding area. So, if the committee was mindful to approve it, I would ask that the officers strengthen the condition, and I leave it to the officers, but the condition at the moment, which is to make this £20,000 amount, is a little bit ambiguous. I think it should be on the requirement of the local authority, because it seemed to me the way it reads that it's possible that they could suggest that perhaps they weren't responsible for it. And we have previous example of that with John Lewis, where they denied that the extra parking problems are emulated from them, and we know exactly how difficult it is to enforce that. So I'd like them to look at that condition, to strengthen it up, to make it a requirement to pay the 20,000 on the requirement of the local authority. The local authority haven't taken reasonable steps to ascertain the need for
a CPZ or PPA. That would be my first point. The second point is on the environment, and by environment I probably mean shrubs and trees. It's a very bleak looking car park at the moment, and although the condition on retaining some of the trees is there, I would like to see, because I note that the landscaping scheme is to be delegated, I'd like to see something stronger under that, requiring something to the effect of a substantial landscaping, because some car parks can put shrubs and trees between parking spaces and turn it from being such a tremendously bland and area. And I'd like to see that strengthened up again, because we don't as such have control over that element. And I obviously trust the officers, but I think I'd like to put something in there strengthening what is there at the moment, because I would be unhappy with just, there are very few trees there, and even if you replace what they're there, that in my view isn't adequate. So those were two elements that I would make on the development.
Thank you, David. Let's deal with each point in turn. The 20,000, is that a legal agreement or a condition? The £20,000, officers.
Legal agreement.
That's a legal agreement, so it's not a condition. So, but it will be a legal agreement.
Yeah.
So would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, all the more reason, if it is a legal agreement, that it should be down to the a requirement of the local authority to make that decision. Doesn't matter whether it's a condition or, in fact, it makes it stronger if it's a legal agreement.
Thank you, David. Can you comment on that, officers? Which I don't mind whether it's Barry or Toby.
So I'm going to confuse things. So it is a condition of the legal agreement, but it's in the legal agreement, and that's the strongest possible place for it. And the wording would generally be that that money is put aside for a consultation, and if the local authority considers it's necessary in consultation with residents, then that money would be spent on bringing it forward. Does that?
So does that, David? Does that answer you, or does that satisfy what the point? I know what you. I can see where you're going with it. Does that satisfy you, as it were, David? You're on mute. You're on mute, David. You're muted, David.
Right, well, probably again just as well. I'm happy with what Barry said. That sounds fine. That's not what it says in the agenda item, but I'm happy with what he says.
Right, thank you, David. That takes us on to David's point about it.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, before we move on, can we just note that let's make sure we amend the legal agreement to reflect what I've just said, if that appeases or addresses the concern. So if the minutes say we do amend it, if that's supported.
If the minutes can say that, thank you. That takes us on to David's second point, and to expedite matters. We've still got Rebecca waiting to speak, but I haven't forgotten you, Rebecca. But I'm going to add something into what David said to try and expedite things, which David's mentioned about the landscaping, which I concur with 100%. If we can, I don't think it's a fairly open condition. That is a condition. I'll leave you to find the actual condition number. I've got it in front of me here somewhere. It's condition 15, I think. I'm just getting to it. And that leaves it open. But I agree with what David's saying. We haven't got a condition, I don't think. Or if it is, it's a very weak condition. I think on lighting, yes, it's condition 17. I'm not sure we need to change this. I just think lighting is very important. What I would not want to see is this is a large car park, and I would not want to see this lit up like with very bright lighting that spreads out, shall we say, across to Albert Road, and the residents over on that side can see this massive, great lot of light opposite them. On the other hand, I understand what the applicants have said about improving lighting on the car park for safety. I absolutely get that. With modern lighting, I'm no lighting technician or expert, but you can get lighting that is not necessarily low lighting. It can still be standard sort of height lighting, but it is directed well down into the car park and doesn't stand out like a beacon. So the condition just says it will be a lighting scheme to control the hours and level of illuminance of the lighting shall be submitted to the local planning authority, etc. Could the officer, I don't know if the officers could comment on both what David said about the landscaping, because we've got a fairly open condition on landscaping and mine one on lighting. Do we need to strengthen that? And you can see where we're both coming from, I think.
Yes.
Chair, I think so. Councillor Aurora has left the meeting, so we just may need to wait for him to rejoin.
Okay, we're just adjourn, as it were. We're all staying here, but we would just wait to make sure that Roy is back on the meeting.
Councillor Cunningham, I believe you're on mute at the moment.
I've had a message from Councillor Aurora. He's trying to reconnect at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, David.
This may be tempting Providence, but for once in its life, my technology is behaving itself. And Gary Marsden will be very pleased to hear that if he's still in this meeting.
Chair, would you like to go to an adjournment just to wait for Councillor Aurora?
Yeah, we'll adjourn till, I don't want to adjourn for too long. What do you think? Just till it's 2047. Do we go to 2015? Is that long enough?
2050, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
That'll give us 3 minutes, and that'll give us anybody a comfort break as well. So I will just mute and turn my video off.
Chair, we're live again.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Again, or welcome back. I'm glad you managed to rejoin the meeting successfully, Roy. Thank you. Good to see you, Roy. David Cunningham, Councillor Cunningham, had just asked a question made a comment about the landscaping, and he'd like to see that condition strengthened in some way. And I went on to add to that about the lighting. The condition regarding lighting, and I may wish to have that strengthened. Had you heard those questions, Roy? If you could just confirm that. My microphone is not working. Could you indicate? Can you hear us okay? You can just indicate on screen. Could you put your thumb up? Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Councillor Aurora has confirmed that he did. He only left the meeting at the point that after Councillor Cunningham and I had put our points, and the officers were then going to go and make a response. So I'm going to turn to, I don't mind, to Toby probably, or Barry, I don't mind who, if you could respond to those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the landscaping condition we've got is condition 15. I suppose, I mean, it asks for details of that. I suppose the landscaping is set out within the plans, but we can, I don't know whether there's anything more we can add to that other than we can ask them for additional information. I know they're watching, so we can do that, and we can certainly add informatives. But I don't know if there's any particular other words that we could add to that condition that would necessarily help us.
Can I say I really like the word substantial?
Yeah.
So submitted to.
Sorry, I don't know if I could just interrupt to say that I did read the ecological report today, and there are some quite detailed recommendations of what kind of plants to put in there, so including hedging, wildlife hedging, and actually they also recommended a place to get them, but it might be worth looking at that had some detailed information.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add very quickly. I think that we could have the landscaping condition to be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority, and then add an informative to say when discharging that condition, we shall look for substantial planting in line with the ecological report so as to provide some ecological enhancements on the site. And then with regards to lighting, we certainly wouldn't want this, as we say where I'm from, to look like Blackpool illuminations in the evening. So we would look for a condition that would say lighting scheme to be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority, and then an informative when discharging that to ask for directional lighting, LED lighting, so as to minimise light pollution in the area, and also to minimise any impact on any ecological value which would be enhanced by the increased landscaping. So we wouldn't want to ruin any ecological work by the lighting. So we could knit all those four things together.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be happy with that, and I think David would as well. Yeah, is that okay? I think he's nodding. Yeah, thank you. That takes me on to Rebecca, who has been waiting patiently for some time now. Rebecca.
Thanks, Malcolm. I just one of the things I wanted to say is that I'm really pleased with the employment use of this site. I think that obviously we talk about in our questions and in our comments we focus on the conditions. So I just wanted to say that positive. And then to be honest, Malcolm, you talked about the charging points, which was the thing that I wanted to talk about. I was going to bring up my confusion over the numbers. I hadn't got as far as working out the numbers as well as you had. And I completely agree with that condition. I think the rapid charging points is a really helpful kind of emphasis put on it, because I think that's more important than numbers, but numbers still matter. So I just want to, I guess, in line with the chair, emphasize that for myself, I really think that's a key thing. I think air quality policy is behind time, and I think Councillor Bainan's point about the fact that this will, from our colloquial layman's perspective, generate more trips because of the way that Lidl's used. Yeah, obviously policy and traffic modelling is being spent a lot of time doing it and doesn't support that point. So I think it's more a comment saying that I hope that we catch up with it, and I just wanted to emphasise that condition over electric charging points.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I don't think you need officers to come back on anything you just said. Is that right? Yeah, there. Thank you. And it might be the last comment before we go to the vote is from Kim. Thank you. Over to you, Kim.
Hi. So I just wanted to clarify the recycling point. In the application, where they asked for details on waste and recycling, they did. It was ticked no, and I just would like to know why that was. I mean, is it just because it's not going to be increased? I suppose I'm saying I'd like to check that it's not being decreased, especially for curries, because they are required, I think, to take back small electrical appliances under any producer responsibility legislation. So we want to make sure that that can still happen. And I do think that Aldi will, so Lidl will have waste that they need to dispose of, just to check those facilities are there.
Thank you. Inevitably, they will all produce recyclable waste, which we all want recycled. Is that covered well enough, Toby? I think Toby's just looking at the relevant conditions.
Sorry, yes, sorry, yes, I am just looking that up. Hold on a second. I think it does cover it. Yeah, I can see what I've just checked the application form, and it does say what you say, but refuse storage. So condition 12 says refuse storage facilities and recycling facilities shall be provided prior to the occupation of development, in accordance with details to be submitted. So yes, that will be required. While I talk about it, I have found confirmation that they would provide fast charging points. So I found something which confirms that. So it was saying 7, but
I think we leave it as we discussed earlier. But yes, it's good that they are indicating. Okay, thank you. As I see it, if this application was, if this was, should we say, an X factory or something, and it was to be demolished in a brownfield site, I would probably take a different view on it. But we have got a retail park there now, albeit that retail park excludes the sale at the moment of food and drink. I do take that into account, and I take into account the objectors' views that where they've expressed that this could be detrimental to the New Malden High Street shopping area and other local shopping areas, in that it would draw trade away from that. I'm not totally convinced on that, as far as I think it's up to each of us to balance whether that is going to happen or not. Overall, I think we will be on thin ground on that, given that the reports we've got. So I will probably be in favour. I will be in favour of approving this. But before we go to the vote, I just want to check that should this be approved, we've talked about the EV charging points, so we're going to change the wording on that slightly. The delivery hours is going to be incorporated in, as Dave suggested, and the officers came back on. And we're going to have informatives on the landscaping and lighting. Have I covered everything there, Sam, Barry, or Toby? I think I have, but could you just confirm?
The other one was the section 106, just to clarify the CPZ for council decision.
Yeah. So I think if I can just see everybody, are we all happy with those slight, or should we say, strengthening of conditions and the informatives? And I can see if anybody wants to dissent from that, you can put your name in the chat function now. And there's nothing coming up, so it looks like that's what we're voting on. So I hope what we're clear. We're voting on the recommendation to approve, subject to those extra points that I've just gone through. With that, I'm going to go to the vote. So I'll ask Sam to take a roll call. So it's over to you, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Aurora, is your microphone working at the moment?
It is indeed. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes.
That's good.
Wonderful. Apologies for that short interruption. Are we taking vote, are we?
Yes, so I'll begin now.
Thank you.
So I will now call upon each councillor in turn. Please can you indicate how you wish to vote by saying for, against or abstain. Please can you also confirm that you've been present for the duration of the meeting. Councillor Archer.
For and present for the duration of the meeting.
Councillor Aurora.
For and present throughout the duration of the meeting, apart from 1 or 2 interruptions there.
Councillor Bailey.
For and present for the meeting.
Councillor Bainon.
For, and I have been present throughout the meeting.
Councillor Cunningham.
For, and I have been present for the entire meeting.
Councillor Dunstone.
For, and I have been present throughout the meeting.
Councillor Edwards.
I've been present throughout the meeting and I'm in favour of this.
Councillor Heap.
I have been present throughout this meeting and I'm for.
Councillor Mole.
For, and I've been present throughout proceedings.
Councillor Ryder Mills.
For, and I've been continuously present.
And Councillor Self.
Thank you. I've been present throughout and I'm voting for. Thank you.
So that's 11 in favour, unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. And with that, that takes us on to urgent items, and there are none. So I close the meeting at 21:03. Thank you all.